Now, if you did, I never get tired of looking at these warbird pictures. This is from the book Ed Gallagher so graciously loaned me. And just looking here at invasion stripes and all the things that are similar to Spitfires. Just love it. Ed,
complaining about how much snow there is down in New Jersey. Now this is pretty good. You're in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. This is pretty good. We've had 2 days of 50-degree weather and the snow has gone down considerably. If you look real carefully right in front of you, you might see a mailbox. This is what real snow is. And the last thing I want to hear, all the money I'm spending on your videos, I don't want to hear any more whining and bedwetting about how much snow you've got. You also haven't told everybody that you went out and spent $1,000 on a snowblower and you have Craig do your driveway all the time. So listen, no more. I don't want to hear any more about how much snow you've got. 2 days ago you couldn't even see the tops of those bushes, so we've had some considerable melting. Now obviously the reason I'm going to take this video is because you've been complaining about getting some vacuum forming footage on there so you can show everybody all my trade secrets. So we'll take a ride up to Welsh Fluorocarbon World Headquarters in scenic Dover, New Hampshire. And at some point in the next day or so, I've got some canopies to make for Bob Harvey and a couple other guys. We'll take some video of how we do that stuff. But until then, no more. I don't want to hear anything else about how much snow you've got. You understand? Now, once again, just to give you a little clue about what it's like to live in New Hampshire. Look how well they maintain the streets up here. Man, this is terrible. I got another month and a half of this stuff before I even see the street. Yeah, but this is real snow, Wendy. None of that New Jersey stuff. See that? You think you got it tough down there. Look at this guy. But you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything, except for maybe Isla Mirada, Florida. Oh, before I drive off the road, we better shut this thing off. Alright, we've gone about 20 minutes. We're on our way up to Welsh Fluorocarbon. Look what we run into. Unbelievable fog. That's what happens in the middle of the winter when it hits about 45 degrees up here in New Hampshire. Everyone in the other lane driving with their headlights on. People going by me looking at me like I'm an idiot. See, I learned this driving out to the team trials with you. It can be done. This is unbelievable. You can't even see the guy in front of me. And here I am driving with a camera in my hand. Welcome to New Hampshire. This is it. We made it through the fog. We're here. This is the vacuum forming area. Notice there's the proverbial 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. Oh, this is it. Right down here. Let's see if I can do this. Right down there, the very end. That's where we'll be this afternoon making some canopies. When we first moved up here 5 years ago, this place was almost vacant. We had a couple machines, 4 employees. Now there's 20 of them down there. We're getting ready to double our size. We're going to buy the unit next door, and in a couple months we're going to break through the wall that you see right there, and we're going to be twice as big. And life will be good. Right now it's a sea of mass confusion and an exercise in daily reorganization. I'll give you a little tour about all the things that we do here. There's some pretty neat stuff. Every pacemaker in the world has a part that comes out of this shop, so anybody out there that is wearing one of those things was made right here. You get on any commercial airliner and you're looking by the fire extinguisher and you see a thing called PBE, stands for Portable Breathing Equipment. That's the beginning of it, right there. Alright, we snuck in here. It's lunchtime, the shop is quiet. Everybody's upstairs. There's guys in the microwave, there's guys in the conference room. Oh. But we're going to sneak down here and we're going to run a couple of canopies. Alright, these are some of the molds that we got. You may see some familiar ones in there. Yeah, then I get idiots that work here that have to walk by and give me a hard time and everything. Life just wouldn't be the same without Steve there giving me a hard time. There's all kinds of cool stuff down here. Now over here, in here, rows and rows and rows. Every single one of those boxes has at least one thermoforming mold in there. Most of that stuff is pacemaker stuff. Now over here, what you're looking at here is a vacuum forming machine. When we started the business, this thing really came out of a dump. And when I say that, I'm not kidding. Bought it for about $3,000, put some heaters on it, did some wiring, and it's been running without a hitch for about 11 years. Thing's old, but it works great, and we've probably billed in 11 years millions and millions of dollars off of this machine with very little investment. But basically what happens is we have this thing here is called a clamp frame, what you're seeing here. We clamp a piece of film in there, we raise it up, we bring these two heaters out around the film and melt it, then we push the heaters, these heaters move, push the heaters back, and pull the clamp frame down and suck it over a mold. Everything happens pretty quickly. I'm going to see if I can get somebody down here to do some footage while I make a couple canopies. But it's pretty simple. It's a pretty basic process. I'm sure there are guys out there that it's no mystery to them. But you've been asking for it for years, so rather than listen to your bedwetting and say, Midgley, send me some footage of how you do these things, yeah, here it is. So let me get set up, cut a few pieces of film, and I'll show you how this works. Okay, this is what it looks like ready to go. This thing here is a vacuum box right down here. The vacuum actually comes up through the bottom of the table and pulls across this glass. Here's our clamp frame. Down in here's a piece of film. It's nice and clean. Came right out of Hazel Sig's warehouse. It's not the stuff I like to use. It's sort of thin. But what's going to happen is these heaters, and I'm going to do just the top heater. We're going to try to get this without making a mistake. Basically what's going to happen is we're going to pull this top heater out over the plastic film and get it to melt. And then when it's right at the right temperature, or the melt bubble is at the right size, what we're going to do is we're just going to lower this clamp frame and pull a vacuum. One of the things I didn't do is check the machine to see how it's set up. I'm just going to go. One of the things I don't want to do, because I'm sneaking in here during lunch, is screw up someone else's setup on a job that they're currently running that actually makes money for us. So we're going to hope that the setup is good enough and we don't screw anything up here. All right, we're going to pull this out. Let's see if we can watch the film melt. There you go, it's melted. It's dropping. Let's see what happens. There you go. Open up the clamp frame. I'm doing this by myself. I couldn't get anybody to do this for me. We're going to pull this off. We're going to see what we've got. There you go. Now what's going to happen is we'll trim that part out. And that'll go to somebody. Actually, that one's not too good. The quality of the mold isn't that great. It doesn't produce great parts, but that's basically the process. Some of the molds that I've got are real nice. They produce real good quality parts, others don't. This one's sort of in the middle. This is done on a 6x12 inch sheet. Some of the other ones are done on a 6x6. But that's basically how it works. Let's see if we can do some more. Okay, what we got here is one that's a little bit larger. I mean, this thing takes up the entire clamp frame. Let's see what we got. Not bad. Now that'll go to my good friend Bob Harvey. Contrary to popular belief, Bob is he's a pretty cool guy. He certainly made an effort to help me out while I'm busy looking for these Vico and Froome spinners. Bob was one of the first guys I called, and he's certainly made an effort to help me out of a jam. By the way, anybody out there that's watching this, if you got a Vico or Froome 2 1/4 inch needle nose or parabolic spinner, I am willing to pay any price for one in good shape. So if any of you guys out there have them, I'm looking for them. If you're willing to part with them, cash or trade, whatever, I'm out there looking for them. Just to show you, it doesn't work right every single time. This right here is called a web. For all you thermoforming experts like Bill Suarez, that's a web. That's when you have too much film and not enough place for it to go. You get crazy stuff going on. But there's a real good chance that this canopy is usable because the web happened below the part where some guy may cut it off. So maybe it's usable, maybe it's not. It's definitely one that I'd send along just for free and say, here, use this one to shape and fit and all that kind of stuff. So everything can be used. But that just goes to show you that not everything works every time. One of the tricks we do, when you have a part that webs, what it means is, like I said, you got too much film and going into a space that's too small. And typically this would be done, instead of a 6x12, this would be done in a 6x6 because it's a fairly small canopy. And if it was done in a 6x6, I wouldn't have had the webs. But so what I tried to do in order to get rid of the webs is make 2 canopies in one shot. And it works. If you put them back to back, you're going to get a web. See this web, nice web right in here that you get between the parts. But that part gets totally cut away. So now what I did was, hey, I got smart and made 2. I made an Aries over here, made the green box Nobler over here. This is actually a duplicate of the mold that Wendy made for the green box Nobler back in the, oh God, who knows how long ago, 88, 87. That original mold made, maybe 100 pieces before I had to replace it. So I just took one of the good canopies that I'd made, filled it, poured it, made a new mold, and that was it. And this one will work. This one will work forever, or until I drop it and break it. In the background, the music started. That must mean people are getting ready to come back to work. This is interesting. This is a mold that Frank McMillan made for one of the planes he did last year. He carved it himself and sent it to me, and we agreed that we'd try just resin on the wood, and it didn't work. What happened was, the very first shot I pulled on it, it pulled some of the resin off because he didn't get a good bond on the wood. So what I did was I went back and filled it and sanded it and filled it and sanded it, sprayed it with gray auto primer, and it wasn't giving me the quality that I wanted. Frank is, I don't want to send Frank anything that's not perfect. So what I did was, I took a piece of Teflon film, and if you look very carefully, this thing looks real shiny, almost like it's got plastic on it. Well, in actuality, it does. There's a real thin piece of Teflon film on here, and I pulled that down and sucked it on there first. And that gave me the surface finish that I was looking for, and I just left it on there. So now if I want to make another mold for Frank, or another canopy, what I can do is I can form right over this, or I can take another piece of Teflon film, form it over it, and give myself a smooth working surface again. And the other stuff forms right over this, and everything releases from Teflon. And that's quite often what I'll do to guys who send me their own molds that have been carved out of wood, is just form a thin piece of Teflon over them first. And that's all the mold release agent that you need. If you're listening to this, Wendy, those fiberglass cowls and that kind of stuff you're making, send me the mold. I'll vacuum form a thin piece of Teflon film over it, and you'll never have to be painting molds with mold release agent again. You just lay the Teflon sheet in there that's vacuum formed to the right shape, and you can make them one right after the other. None of this going up by the heat vent and driving Karen out of the house with the smell of that resin. So that's another interesting. Well, I hope you enjoyed the tour of the world-famous Welsh fluorocarbon throughout the day. But now we're home. It's 10:30 at night. Everyone's in bed, and I get a couple hours down here in the shop by myself. And I figured, well, I got a couple molds down here, and while we're on the subject of canopies, because that's what you asked for, I thought I'd just continue a little bit. What you're looking at on some black ripstop nylon is the mold for the Cardinal Kit. Not a lot of guys have this, probably because the front of the canopy is really pointy, and if you're not real careful with this thing, you're going to split it right up the front. And it's certainly not something that we want to put out, or Wendy wants to put out in every kit, because you can't really guarantee that after a year or two of flying that the front's going to stay together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rework this thing a little bit, tailor it for my new plane this year, and then we're going to see how that looks, and then maybe you'll be able to get them with the kit. When I say the front's really pointy, right here, that's a real high stress point. And when you trim that out, there's a real good chance that it can split right up the center if it's not handled properly. If you stretch it out too far, if you squeeze it in too much, could be a problem. So we're gonna change that a little bit. Notice it's a lot bigger than it really has to be in real life. That's for a reason. You want in the event that you have webs, you want to make sure that the webs, like there's a little teeny web on this guy right in the front, you want to make sure that the webs don't interfere. And a lot of good mold makers out there know that, and they account for that. Another thing that's important if you're going to do a mold is you take into consideration what's called draft. You don't want any undercuts on this thing. Molds that have undercuts are extremely difficult to demold. And an undercut is if you come down and if this thing cut in and the film wrapped around and cut right in and you couldn't take it off the mold, that's an undercut. You want something that's going to pop right out. If you notice the ones that I did in the shop earlier today, I didn't have any problem demolding any of them. It's not because there's mold release agent on them, it's just because that they're designed properly. The guys that did those things did a good job. You know, they pop right out. A shallow mold that's round or undercut always comes out pretty well. One that's a little taller, like the green box Nobler that Wendy did, you got to work at that one a little bit, but nothing like anything with an undercut. Those things really give us fits. Well, I've got this mold is wood. It's got nothing on it except some, as Wendy would say, body putty. The front of this thing, again, it's getting sort of nasty. I don't think it could make any more good canopies. I've made a couple dozen off them. There's some guys out there that wanted them that have them. But that's got to be fixed, repaired. Either that or I've got to pour a new mold out of this guy. And that may be what I do, because I am going to change this one, and this will be gone forever. So that'll probably be what I do. In order to pour it, notice this guy's got a crack. I'll just tape that up, spray this with mold release agent, and pour it. And then probably, if it doesn't pop right out, I'll just destroy this mold. I'll just destroy that canopy, and then I can always make another one. Now, there's a couple other things I wanted to show you while I got the camera out, and I'm playing Cecil B. Urtnowski here. Here's a canopy that I got from a guy named Fred Carnes in Shalimar, Florida. He's going to come out with an article on a plane called the Atom. It's going to appear in Flying Models in March or April, or whenever Bob gets around to putting it in there. He sent me this back in October or November and asked if I could make a mold or make canopies from this. Now, for you guys that want to send canopies or molds in, this is not acceptable to make parts from. Number one is it's not bigger. It's just the original canopy that was cut off the plane. Number two is it's really old and it's cracked. If you notice, there's a split in it. There's no back. And in order to really do this, the thing you'd have to do is to basically carve a block and just keep carving and fitting until it fits the shape, and then just put a bottom on it and just extend it out. It's a lot of work. It can be done. It's not that difficult. It's a lot of work. But the problem that I have is that when guys send me drawings or whatever, my interpretation of a drawing may be somewhat different from someone else's. And I did that once, and I certainly learned a lesson that this guy was looking for something very, very, very exact, and it didn't work out that way. And so what I've done is basically said anyone who wants me to do a custom canopy for them, they have to supply the mold. That way it's not open to interpretation. The guy who draws the plane or whatever, he's the guy that supplies the mold. And in that case, then there's no bad feelings, there's no nothing between anybody, and it's exactly what he wants. He knows what he's going to get. I certainly don't mind touching up and finishing the surface so that we get good quality parts, but actually making the mold for someone else is something that I learned that probably shouldn't do. So what we're going to do is Fred will probably end up sending me something that he carves himself that duplicates that. Or what I can do is say, hey, I've got molds that look like this. If you don't want to take the time to carve one up and approve it, then we'll do something that's similar, and that'll be what goes on the plane. Now here's another one. This is interesting for you guys that want to try to do this at home. Now I don't know, this is kite material. For all you guys out there that don't know about stunt kites, maybe at the end of this I'll give you a little stunt kite tour or something like that. I got one in the shop that I just finished making. That'll be for next year. This is a mold someone sent me. I've forgotten who it was. I don't know if this is like the original Argus canopy mold or whatever. But there's a way that you can do this yourself. Now that mold somebody carved. They put resin on it. They did the whole thing, and they set it on a block. That's the way to finish it. Okay. And then what they did was they made their own little teeny clamp frame. It's a miniature clamp frame. It's a little bit different from what I would do, but this thing opens up. You can actually see that it splits, and you can slide a piece of film in there. Now what you can do is you can actually take this and set it up on blocks in an oven and allow the film to melt. And while the film is hot, you can take it out and basically just push it down over the mold. And if you're real careful, you push it right down over the mold, you stretch the film, you let it cool, and you actually get pretty good results. You can actually do it that way. So if you're in a pinch, if you want to do wheel pants, you want to do other things, this is really a valid way to do this stuff. It's a little bit trial and error. A lot of it has to do with figuring out how much time to put the thing in the oven. I'm sure for those of you guys out there that have wives, the last thing she wants in the oven is some polycarbonate or Lexan or some poly who did it and ran smelling up her kitchen. So sometimes you can actually heat this up with an industrial heat gun. What you want is uniform heat, and you want to soak the entire clamp frame. Get that melt bubble so that the film is hot. You shouldn't be able to touch it. Set this on a surface, and like I said, bring it over very carefully and drop it down. Bring it right over it. Now another way you can do this is you can actually do it in reverse. What you do is you heat this thing up, and you probably want to stand it up off the table. Bring it out while the bubble is still hot, but you make a very shallow bubble. And instead of bringing this over the mold, like this, like that, like we did in the shop, which is called Drape Forming, okay? You can actually take this, you can turn the mold over and push it in. Now if you have a very shallow melt bubble, you can see that this will do the same thing, and in most cases that's actually a better way to do it. You don't invert the film on itself, and you get a less stressed part. That's called plug assist thermoforming. What else can I tell you about this? Probably nothing. If anybody out there wants to know more about this, they can certainly call me. Now this is a pretty cool way to do it. If you want one. It's a one-of-a-kind thing, and you want to do it quick and dirty, and you want to play, and your wife doesn't mind messing up the kitchen. You don't mind burning your hands a little bit. Try it. It definitely works. Actually, I'm going to shut this off and get out some parts that I did for a guy on a vacuum former I made. It's actually my next-door neighbor who's an RC helicopter pilot, and I'm going to get out some parts that I vacuum formed for him. With a vacuum former we made out of a Sears shop vac and a couple small pieces of aluminum. Alright, this is a RC helicopter body that I did for my next door neighbor. This guy's hooked. He flies in his yard, he flies upside down, and he does all that crazy stuff that these World Championship RC helicopter guys can do. Flies around trees in his yard, and every once in a while he'll clip one and destroy one of his $2,000 toys, but hey, that's what happens. And what he did was he really got sick and tired of buying these helicopter bodies. So he and I were talking one day, and he was asking if there was a way where we could make these things. And so what we did is he went out and bought a helicopter body, and we cast it up. There were two sides. We cut it in half very carefully. And we made two plaster of Paris molds that split the body. There's a left side and a right side, and if you look, here's the parting line that goes all the way around. Okay, and we just basically did the same thing on a larger scale. We got his wife out of the house. We sent her to Aruba for a weekend, and we messed up his kitchen. And actually, the results were pretty good. The only problem we found was that this little thing right here wasn't really as strong as what we wanted. I think that had more to do with the material choice than anything else. And but God, it worked. We must have made 50 or 60 of these things for guys in his club. This thing's been sitting in my cellar for 3 or 4 years. It's collected dust. I painted it up for him, put the checkerboards on, did all that kind of stuff. But there's another example of something that you can do with a homemade vacuum former. It's pretty simple stuff. We just created a vacuum plate, hooked the Sears shop vac up to it. We brought the clamp frame. We did this technology here. Brought the clamp frame out, pushed it down. One guy hit the vacuum cleaner, turned it on, and it sucked it down real nice. And it doesn't require a lot of effort, doesn't require a lot of money. All it requires is a little bit of ingenuity. And anybody that can build a stunt ship can certainly figure out how to suck a piece of plastic over a plug of wood. Even you, Wendy. Look at that. We're down here just to prove that we actually do watch all the videos that you send. We're down here watching, and all of a sudden, hey, tape 15 of the Spitfire series, there you are, working with those cowls that we just got done talking about earlier in the shop. Hey, who says I don't watch your videos? There's stuff I can learn from you. In the library of Pro Stunt videos is rather extensive. And that's literally probably only half of the ones that he's been, that Winford has sent me over the years. A lot of them are in boxes. Probably a quarter of them are out on loan to guys all over the country. A lot of guys up here in New England share from this. You know, they're everywhere. If I get them back, I get them back. If I don't, I don't. I don't worry about it. I know the guy who makes them, so I can always get more. Before I go to bed, we'll show you what's going on. We got one of these infamous 38 specials that, yes, we are going to monocoat. I couldn't justify spending the time painting this thing. So we're going to monocoat it. I got the wings over there hanging under the Aries. I got the tail over here. Another week or so, that'll be done. Get that up and running. That'll be a lot of fun. There's 4 guys. My father made up 4 of these things for guys. And the place where they fly during the week is sort of rough and bumpy, and it's the last place I want to take my good plane to. But it's always fun to get out and fly with those guys. So, hey, 38 special, here it comes. What else is going on? Oh, good news. Talked to Jim Borelli today, and found out that he and his wife Debbie just adopted a baby girl. If I remember, her name is Lena Marie Borelli. Everyone out there in Pro Stunt Land should call Jib and Debbie and congratulate them. Couldn't happen to 2 nicer people, boy. If any 2 people deserve to have children, it's them. They'll just make absolutely wonderful parents, and I'm really looking forward to spending time with them and their daughter, watching all our kids grow up together, watching Jim change stinky diapers on the field. Instead of carrying his plane to the field, he'll be carrying that infamous bag full of Pampers and bottles and all kinds of stuff. See that? I will get my revenge. Now, the last thing, I guess, before I shut this off, this is the Mortal Kombat Kite. Some of the guys in New England have seen this. I made up another one this year. This is a new one. It's basically a stunt kite. My own design. We sit there. Yeah, I taught myself how to sew. Actually, one of the reasons why I left it out is because I'm actually thinking about using the Mortal Kombat design on this year's new plane. So I'm just using it for inspiration, trying to get ideas, color ideas, that kind of stuff. So I figured I'd let it sit out for a couple days before I stuff it in the bag and put it away until spring. Actually, up here on the beach, we can fly these things all year long. And, if you're in a place where it snows all winter long, or you're in a place where a lot of times it gets really, really windy and unflyable, the neat thing to do is to teach yourself how to fly one of these things, because they're very similar to flying a plane. They'll do everything that a stunt plane can do, including a reverse wing over if you know how to do it. All the maneuvers can be done. It can certainly build up your timing. Some of these things will do 110, 120 miles an hour, so you can build up your reflexes. If you crash them, you don't have to go home and cry. You just go set it up and take off again in 30 seconds. They're a lot of fun. There's a bunch of us out here on the beach that fly them all summer long. But I learned a long time ago a man cannot serve 2 masters, so this plays sort of second fiddle. But it's fun. It gives me something else to do down here at night rather than sniff glue. And that's really it. Shop hasn't changed. I'm sure no one's interested in seeing the shop, so I won't spend a lot of time there. There it is, the Aries. Hopefully it'll be ready to go to Tucson this year. And that's about it. That is really about it. Well, I hope you enjoyed the footage. Hope you learned something about vacuum forming. Like I said, if anybody out there is interested in learning more about it, they can certainly give me a call. Be happy to tell everyone everything I know about it, which will probably take about 2 minutes. Well, take care. Hey, Windy, you're on, mister. Think I'll watch this and go to bed.
Now, I want to thank Dave. Really thank him for that little dissertation about how to make canopies. So these are all modeling techniques that, let's be real. When was the last time you read in a magazine the information that Dave just showed me or showed us? Well, you know, a lot of this stuff is going to die if nobody bothers to preserve it, get it written down. There's very few copies of old magazines left in the world. You know, how many people have an extensive magazine collection? Not many. Another thing Dave has done, and I guess you'll notice starting with this tape or the last one, the real nice Spitfire labels that are on the tapes. He's taken that upon himself to do that, upgrade it, and really appreciate that. Just adds another little professional touch into our Spitfire program. You know, but this Spitfire program isn't really about tape labels or you know, maybe it's not what you think it is. It's really about modeling. It's really about building something that you really want to build that may be a little more complex than the average model, a little harder to do, but certainly the results speak for themselves. Very rewarding to see this come to life. Now, I've been looking at all the trim pictures, and what I want to do is make this yellow band. There's two types of bands that I've seen on Spitfires. One would be a yellow band from the invasion stripes almost out to the tip. And the other one would be a yellow band with red blocks in it. And I'm going to just try to do here, I want to lay out just the yellow band. I don't want to have the red blocks in there. So what I want to do is, looking at it straight from the front, just set up a little pattern on here, and masking tape can be the pattern, and see that I get it on as straight as I can, because I wouldn't want it to be cocked one way or another. And then once I lay it out, I can check that alignment too. In fact, I see I don't have it on straight already. Laying this out straight. Really difficult to measure it, but you can tell just by the high point here. Just about. And once I get it where I want it, I'll put 1/8 inch tape on each side and then mask it out with tinfoil. Now the reason for doing this is I already have yellow in the gun from doing the roundels. So while I have that yellow in there, then I can switch to the next color, which will be one of the colors on the roundels, the red or blue. A little bit of I can use the inside. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out how far out to the tip this goes. It does end quite a ways from the tip. It goes almost out to the tip as far as I can tell from looking back and forth at these pictures. It could make you crazy because there's so many Spitfire versions. It's just one of the things. Now, after a lot of give and take and moving and changing the tape, I settled on this. But one of the things, a good tip here to see if you're happy with the tape line is to run your finger this way. You can kind of feel if there's any little crazy spots in it. That feels pretty decent. Now, once you get a general layout here, one of the things you might want to do, and this applies to all trim that wraps around a leading edge, you take a couple pieces of tape, get all the stickiness off the back, and I'm only making it bigger than normal so I have a place to put my fingertip. And what I do is I wrap this around the leading edge. See where the red lines are? I'll show this up close. And use this as a gauge. Stripe too thick, too thin, too thick, too thin. Just by doing that I can tell, and I can also get them symmetrical and even all at the same time, and that is a good trick with any trim, not only this kind of a trim job. Now what I try to do is I look right from the front, wrap this around and see. Now for instance here, I'm a little on the big side. A little on the big side. So when you're a little on the big side, it's not a problem. You can just put another piece of tape further down. It's always good to lay it out bigger than it has to be and then make it smaller, because when you try to go backwards, you can't slit this tape. It's very difficult. So to make it easy on yourself, now this looks like I just have to adjust it out at the tip here. That's a good trick, by the way. Now I also want to measure the length, and I want to get the length exactly the same. In this case it's 12 7/8, point to point, edge to edge, 12 7/8. Now there's always one final test. After everything measures out right, is just to eyeball it. And that looks pretty good. Now if it measures right and it looks right, there's a small chance it might be right. Not always. Get a good press on this edge, I'll foil this off, and I can get this yellow. Now again, I'm working with time management. I want to get the yellow on here drying. While that's drying, I can work on the next color on my round L's. But I've got to get one thing drying to work on the next thing.
Copy. So, but you know, when you've been in the middle here, and you don't kind of stuff, B20 things where I'm just going to add in like a little snow into it. This is going to be good. See where the yellow, there's a lot of fractals. Some if you put it right at little things around, you can use the same thing up.
Now just one final check from the nose that this is equal. I did the mechanical check. And one little check into the book to see if, you know, how many versions of the Spitfire. There's 8,000 versions, so whichever one I'm trying to simulate here, want to try to get this ready. Okay, I'm going to load up the gun, fire up the compressor, and get this painted yellow. And it is really brutally cold out there. Jeez. I think we could get a break at least while we're painting here. Whew. Whew. I know you can't tell from the video how cold it is. Believe me, it's cold. Well, that pigment does such a job. Unbelievable. Imagine having to go back to using paint without extra pigment. Shut up. Sick of hearing that number. Imagine the old days when you had to put 100 coats of yellow or white. Oh, man. Nightmares. One coat. That's the whole deal right there. Boy, if you pick that up, you're home free all. Now while that's drying up, I'm looking. See, there's just a little bit of an edge that isn't right here, and while I have the yellow in the gun, I can touch that up. What I do is I just use a brush here. But looking around now at anything that might or might not need a touch-up, this is a good time to do it. And the next thing I'm going to do is lay out the roundels here. I got to get the book out and try to get the colors right. Now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to paint the red next. The idea being I'll take the yellow out of the gun, put the red in. I can get all the red on the rudder, and the red on all four of the wing roundels, and maybe get this all drying before this session ends. That would be a real nice goal to get. If I can hold this right in position now, I can actually do this one with one piece of tinfoil, and I get some tape that's been rubbed up on my flannel shirt so it doesn't pull the paint up, and just keep going around the edge here. even now, I found a little ding here, just before I even mask it off and get into doing this. This will let this dry when I do the blue. Get that sanded out. That green stuff is just wonderful. Plus, I noticed another thing. If there's a wrinkle in these, and there's one right here. I feel like stuttering John here this morning. Get rid of that. Now, if I'm really, really careful, I can mask off the part of this. I'll try. The object here would be once I put the red in the gun, I get the red on the back insignia, the red on the roundels, and try to get all four, the top, the two bottom, all done in one shot. That would be very nice, and then I could get out in the spray room and get all the red shot. That would be a nice goal for today.
Let's see, what I'm trying to do is determine, this looks like it's the reddest red possible, so what I'm going to do is dig up, I have a little bit of touch-up paint for Tsunami, which was that real red. That'll make for some nice bright roundels.
And this is what's nice about having, this is the red I used on Tsunami. This is the brightest red. It's a Porsche red, 93 Porsche red. And boy, does it cover. What's nice about always having some touch-up paint.
Now, the next step, while that's drying, try to figure out what my master plan is here. While that's drying, I can be laying out the roundels. Otherwise, I have the whole plane at one time wet and the whole plane dry. Something's always drying, something's always being masked off as long as they're on opposite ends of the plane. This lets me get a little bit better time. And believe me, with all this nonsense going on around here, I'm going to start our bedroom renovation real soon. My goal was to get up to the point, if I could have, having this painted and in clear by the time I started the bedroom renovation, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen now. Like many other things around here, just have no control over it. But we'll get as much done on a paint job, and when we start the bedroom, that's going to kind of be a full-time job. We're doing a major renovation there, ceiling and everything. What I did with using the original pattern, I set up my reference here from the trailing edge, a ½ inch. In the center, 2 inches off the end cap strip, and I put a dot. Now that dot referenced the center of this, and I want to tape the red out first so I can just use that for a center. And I'm going to use masking tape for the whole thing here because we don't have any thin bands. Everything is wide here. The roundels that don't have that band, I think the most practical way is just do a little practice. And for me anyway, it's reasonably easy to lay this out in tape. Remember, if you watch the technique here, and I've done this over and over again, I don't even think about it. It's like pinstriping, you don't think about it when you're doing it. Two hands, one hand is constantly making the curve, one hand is constantly pushing down. And if this is one of the motor skills that's difficult for you, well, there's an answer. Practice. And get better and better, just like playing a violin or whatever. The masking tape that's actually masking tape, not the green stuff, seems to bend a whole lot nicer than the green stuff. So I try to use the green stuff for straight edges, and masking tape, which is 3M, ordinary masking tape, now you can make it a little bit less chance you'll get overspray under this if you can trace this circle out about, I don't know, ½ inch, 3/8 of an inch. Certainly not fancy. We're not looking to make the world's fanciest tinfoil here. But using this for a pattern, this will really save you a little bit of time. It also avoids all those taped edges where you can get overspray underneath. And this red really has a lot of, Tsunami red has a lot of dye in it, so you really don't want to, if possible, get that anywhere near white, or you'll wind up with a pink, something pink anyway. And you can just tear off some 1-inch strips of defuzzyized tape. Now the bottom roundel already has the white piece, so all I'm going to do is tape around the white and then back mask everything and try to keep that edge as close as possible. That would probably be the hardest thing, is just to get the tape right on that edge, just so it's right and you don't have a double or a rough line. And just the same thing I'm doing is just trying to wrap. This is, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a motor skill. If it's wrong, don't be afraid to pull a tape up and do it, you know, more than one time. And actually, a lot of times when you do double taping like this, even after you have the whole thing taped and sprayed, and just before you put the clear on, you can touch up the edges, or I'm sure this will be, with these roundels, this will be a learning experience. I'll be roundel literate when this is finished. Wish I could tape off some squares instead of circles here. Anyway, for sure you want to use the masking tape. You don't want to try to use the green stuff for doing circles. Really not a good idea. Cutting the holes in the tin foil works nicely. That's one good way. Let me tell you, you get punchy taping out these roundels. This is, anybody that ever says to me, this is an easy paint job to do, forget about it. There's more, I've used more masking tape on this plane. I haven't even painted the plane yet, just painting all these stripes and things. This is really an optical illusion. It looks so easy. When you look at a picture in a book, you think, oh boy, no pinstriping. Boy, if you decide to do a no-cheater paint job with no decals, man, get ready for the ride of your life. Unbelievable. This is a lot of work. But I'm sure there's people out there, and I don't have to name names, that'll take one look at this and know. They'll just know, and that's all. That's enough. Doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. I'm sure Ski Dombrowski will know. Anyway, we're closing in on this. I have the red already in a gun. I'm going to shoot this, and that'll probably be the end of this session. And boy, this was longer. This stuff looks so quick on video. I'll tell you, I'm sitting here. I expect to go down to Go-Go Place for lunch, and the girl will be wearing roundels for pasties. I mean, after a while, you really do get shell-shocked doing this stuff over and over. That's ready to paint. Boy, that's going to dry now. It's funny, that looks like a Jap Zero here. We're making a Jap Zero with roundels. Anyway, that Tsunami touch-up paint, and I only had about 2 ounces, was just enough for the roundels, and boy, that's a nice bright red. Covers like iron. Beautiful. This is what I always look at the end of the session. I got a garbage can full of tin foil, empty rolls of tape, razor blades. Never stick your hand in a garbage can. Ugh. See you later. Okay, back in the shop. I want to make sure everything is dried up here on these, thing still looks like a Jap Zero anyway. Oh, and I went through the mail today. These pictures came in from Stephen Hogue from Albuquerque. Nice looking twister here. And one thing I want to show you is, you can't see it in this picture here, he's got some exhaust manifolds. Here, I find another picture. Check the exhaust manifolds out, Joe. Now, if he can have this on a twister, now come on, we gotta have it. Hey, anyway, it's one of the things I will be working on in the future. Thanks to Stephen Hogan, I'll pass these on to Stunt News. Now, my goal here today is to try to get all the tape off of the roundels, and I have a little trick I'm going to use on that, and then I want to mask off the blue, mix up the blue paint, and maybe even get that shot. I don't know if I'm going to have time, but get as much of the blue on as possible. Now, I bought a special color of pigment. It's one of the colors of pigment I'm going to have to mix for the blue on the roundels, blue, and the blue on the little emblem back there. So this looks like it's going to be a piece of cake, but there's a lot of tape on here, and I'm going to very carefully on the side roundels in the bottom. I need to take off the tape without pulling up that little frisket strip that leaves the white band. Tora. Japanese spit. Every time I get the tape off and the aluminum foil off, it's just one more step toward being a Spitfire here. It's really starting to get to be exciting to me anyway. Making sure I have that paint edge knocked down as much as I can. There's a little paint dust. All I did, I took the original roundels we made out of paper, put in 3 little spots where the tape can hold it down, and I'm going to just do the old 1/8 tape around the edge trick. Back mask out the red, back mask out this. Get a little look at how this is going to look when it's all in. Every color that goes into it, it starts to look fancier and fancier. Now, typically, the bigger the curve is, the bigger diameter the curve is, the easier it is to get a nice straight line. And maybe there is another trick to that frisket paper that, or some shelf paper or something, but, you know, if all else fails, this way is perfectly serviceable. Just takes a little hand-eye coordination, which of course I don't have. And boy, believe me, there is no substitute for practicing. This is the kind of stuff that if you do 8, 10, 15 of them, at the end, you're really tuned into it. The first one, you're all thumbs and bagels. There's nothing really too high-tech here. One thing is easy to do is start the tape inside and then work to the edge. Don't try to start on an edge. You'll never really get that nice transition. At least I don't anyway. I'm sure people that do this, you know, on a more regular basis don't need as much of a tune-up. I usually need about 2 days of this before I can really slam the tape down and be happy with it. Anyway, you notice one of the things I did is, as I was cleaning the gun, I try to lay out the paint job with that little schedule from light colors kind of to dark colors, or for instance, when you lay out the yellow and then the next color is the red, it's not a problem, but you wouldn't want to go from red to yellow. Then one drop of red in the gun makes it a mess. So now we're going from red, we're going to be going to a very dark blue. So whatever little red stays in the inside of the gun, it won't be a big problem. And I've tried to lay it out that way. Tried to, you know, plan the paint job, that little schedule I made up in the beginning. I kind of try to use that as a guide too. And the last little tail of the tape, just leave it inside. And this kind of an inside circle, sometimes it's easier just to do the tape in pieces. It looks like this is going in. You just don't get the big wrinkles in the tapes. It gives it a little flexibility. Because I use the pieces that I cut out from the other roundels, they fit right in there. Big time saving. With all that time saved, you can buy Uncle Herb a free trip to AA. Oh man, I'd be one day ahead if it wasn't for him. And don't laugh, everybody's got a relative like Herb in their family. Doesn't matter. Unbelievable. Okay, we're getting ready to close in. I'm going to get the rest of this back mast. I know this is one of the things a lot of people just don't have a real comfortable relationship with, is back masking, and they always seem to take longer and more work than it should be, and maybe just watching this tape you'll see I have the same problem and I can't help you at all. I don't know. I'm trying to make real careful. I don't want any of this blue is relatively dark blue. I don't want to, if possible, giving me any overspray that goes under the tape. I think I'd save a little bit of time or foil or whatever. Cutting a big hole in here. Seems like this is a little bit better method. Can you do enough roundels, boy? Oh, this is unbelievable. Every time I see a bomber go by, I imagine somebody in the RAF had to do this on a real plane. Unbelievable. By the way, if you don't really know, and I didn't notice, all the invasion stripes that were painted on planes were painted with a brush the night before the invasion, in the dark. So if you ever see neatly masked off invasion stripes, you know it's like a rebuild or whatever. So much information since we've been spitfiring it up here. Little things you didn't know, you still don't know them. Okay, finally got all the, I feel like the aluminum man of New Jersey here. Anyway, it's all masked off. I'm going to go mix the paint and get ready to spray this puppy up. We made it. 15 minutes to spare. Now you can see it. This is just... trying to find where the hell is. Here's the computer printout here. I can't tip the can, of course. The lid is already off. Tells you what's in it and how much pigment. Now, that would be the normal amount of pigment for a can that size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add Sig Light Coat to this amount. Now this would be the normal amount if this was acrylic. I'm going to use just a little less though, so in effect there'll be more pigment in the paint. Maybe 1/4 less, which would be the equivalent of 1/4 less pigment. I want to get the Flexol and fisheye in here. By the way, I had a funny experience. I don't know if this is relative to what normally happens. Let me show this on the camera so if it ever happens to you. Let me mix this up first. You won't panic. Now what happened here is when I mixed this with the light coat, it was so thick you're obviously not going to be able to spray that. That's almost like Jell-O. So what I did, I took a little bit of this material, thinned it out a little bit, and of course this has no thinner in it now. We'll put some 3608S in here and run a little test.